From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode number 74. Today's show is brought to you by PDF Pen 7 from Smile and Squarespace. My name is Mike Hurley. I am joined by Mr. Federico Vitici. Hi, Federico.
Hey, Mike.
And Mr. Stephen Haggard.
Hey, boys.
Big week. Lots of video this week. That's not a big week at all, is it? I just figured I'll go with that.
Yeah, well, not much is happening. We got the goods last week with the new Apple betas, a bunch of releases and announcements. This week, I wouldn't say we're talking to ourselves, but we're close.
Yeah, we thought out a topic from the cryogenic chamber, and that's going to be on the episode a little later on. But we've been waiting to talk about it for a while. But Stephen, I believe that you have some follow-up based on 9.3.
I do. I just thought it'd be nice to follow up on Night Shift in particular. I believe that all three of us are running the beta currently. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm running the public beta, which I haven't ever done before. I've always run the developer builds. This time, I kind of wanted to see what that process was like. It's really nice. You do it all on your phone and download the certificate. It's actually really nice now.
Hey, Hacker, do you know that I still use your developer account to download the betas? Did you know that?
Why?
You know our company has one.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I'll just do that in future.
Yeah.
I've been using your developer account since like
my
iOS
5.12
7.
one?
Yeah, your 5.12 one.
I didn't think I was still paying for that. I should look into that.
You are. I use it.
I think we should try to have Mike do some developer stuff and see what happens.
I accept all of the NDAs for you and stuff.
Oh, good.
Just so you know.
If you ever see any alerts in there, let me know.
No worries.
Mike's just spending money on iTunes under that account.
Don't look at your receipts.
We spoke about it last time. I've used Flux for years, and I instantly have loved this on iOS. And it works really well, and it's pretty nice. You can go in there, you can turn it off, you can turn it on, you can adjust how dark or how red it gets, which is pretty nice. I think it's really well done. What do you guys think? Y'all liking it?
I really like Night Shift. I installed Flux on my Mac, and it's a lot more tricky to set up. And because of my weird hours and stuff, one evening, my Mac was just orange. The entire screen was orange. Because it's trying to judge by the times that you actually should and shouldn't be on the computer, and it was basically telling me to go to bed, but I still was working. So I had to tweak it quite a bit, and I haven't really found that to be the case with iOS. I pushed the slider up a bit, so at its warmest, it gets a bit warmer than it was, the color. But it's way simpler. But with Flux, you get way more features, right? Which is why it's more complicated.
Yeah, my experience with Night Shift, and I did the same as Mike. I installed Flux on my computer, and my experience so far is Night Shift on iOS 9.3 is really nice, really easy to use. I can set a custom schedule, and I've grown really accustomed to it already, to the point where I'm showing the features to my friends, and they're really into the idea. When you're in bed and the lights are turned off, the screen is less of a eye burning sensation to your eyes. The problem is with Flux on the Mac, it's really trickier to use, and it almost feels. Flux is like my mother. No matter how many times I explain that I work late in the evenings and I don't want my computer screen to be orange at 9 p.m., it keeps making my screen orange, and I really don't like it. And I forgot to turn off the feature a few days ago, and I opened the computer at about 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and the screen was red. And
that's what
I was like, what's going on here?
The tip that I have, Federico, because I was trying to adjust it and it wasn't working. If you tell it you wake up at 11 or 12, so there's a little slide, a little buttons you can click to say what time you wake up. That's what fixes it. It pushes the whole schedule out. So I told it I wake up at 10 a.m. and it's made it way more usable for me later in the day.
Okay. Yeah, I just like, I guess, the iOS implementation better. It's just easier to use. There's a custom schedule. You set that. There's a slider, and you're done. But I'm really liking it. And in fact, I'm wondering, how did I go so many years without this sort of yellow display during the night? And I wonder, what damage did I cause to my eyes all these years?
It's fine.
I don't know if it's I don't know how damaging it is. I don't know. I was listening to ATP and they were talking about studies that were saying it maybe is better or maybe isn't. But that's not why I like it. I like it just because it's more pleasant. I just find it more pleasant to use. I'm not using it because I'm worried that I'm burning my retinas. I just think it's just a nicer experience. And I hope that, I really hope that Apple bring it to the Apple Watch, because I look at my watch now and it's like a flashlight. It's ridiculous when my watch goes off in the evening. I'm like, it really does like grab me. Like really just like it affects me quite deeply.
Yeah, the white text on the watch is like blue after you use the iPhone or the iPad with Night Shift.
Yeah,
it could be a placebo effect that now that the feature is new, it's looking super amazing to me. But I feel like I can sleep better because my eyes don't feel as much strain as before. Because I'm one of those people. I use the iPhone or the iPad until the very last point before I fall asleep. So because I'm reading, and I feel like it's more pleasant and it makes me more relaxed in a way.
Justin tweeted to us and asked if we thought that it would make its way to the Apple TV, and I'm not really sure why that would exist for the TV. Because you're watching stuff, and I think probably the best thing is not to have the colors like really affected when you're watching a movie.
Yeah, so I have on my Flux setup on the Mac, you can tell it to like opt out of certain applications. So for me, if I have Photoshop in the foreground, or if I have iTunes in the foreground, it disables, because it, especially TV shows that are sort of like, or movies that are sort of have dramatic coloring. So something like Breaking Bad, I noticed it where, a lot of their palettes are sort of already kind of orangey, warm colors. That Flux really messes with that. So I agree with you. I think it'd be weird on the Apple TV once you're in content, but I would not mind it being an option when you're like zipping around the menus, or at least something that is darker. I mean, the old Apple TV basically was a black background, like iOS used to be way back in the day before you could set your own wallpaper. And now it's that much lighter color, and it is brighter. There's more light coming from that UI now. So I think it'd be nice if Night Shift's not the right answer, something on the Apple TV to make it darker, especially when you're navigating around. But to back up to a second, Federico, you were saying, you couldn't believe you made it this long without it. I was showing it to my wife actually just last night. She had her phone out and had my phone out. She's not running the beta, and I was like, "Oh, hey, like we talked about this on the show, but it's this thing." Because I've tried to get her into Flux in the past, and she just isn't interested. And I learned a long time ago not to force technology upon her unless it's something like backup strategy. But so I was showing her the phone, and she's like, "Oh, that really is nice. Like, it really does feel better on my eyes." And I found that interesting. That now she wants me to install Flux on her MacBook, but that people who haven't been part of this conversation of like blue light is potentially bad for you, that it feels better, that it just looks better. It's nicer to use, and all of like the science stuff aside, which ATP talked a lot about, I think it's just a better experience for people. There was that conversation on ATP, I believe, last week about the idea that it makes it easier to go to sleep, and Flux says that to a degree that Apple doesn't say it to the same degree, and just kind of, is it actually scientifically valid, or is it again just something that's kind of nice? And I don't know where it falls in that. I'm not here to answer that question. But I do find it interesting that in iOS 9 itself, if you go to the displays settings where this blue light reduction is, the little helper text is, when enabled, blue light reduction allows your eyes to relax so that falling asleep is easier. Again, not saying that it helps you sleep better, but that falling asleep could be easier. It's just sort of like quasi-scientific language that I find it interesting to see how they explain it, because there may be those benefits, but at least in the our very limited sample size of us, it is just nicer, and there's nothing wrong with it just being nicer if that's all it is.
Yeah. Cosmetic changes are some of the best types of changes, right? Like it feels nice, it looks nice, and this is one of those things that makes kind of iOS feel new in a different kind of way, right? Like it's got a new thing to it, which again, like is very interesting as to why they did it now. And I'm very interested to see what June holds.
Yeah, maybe because they know that from now until June, there's going to be a lot of bloggers staying up late at night, working on rumors and news.
All for you, man.
They want to help them, sleep better. That must be the reason.
Yeah, I reckon so.
That's right. Internally, it's the Federico feature. Federico
yeah, also Mike. Mike does a lot of late night working and podcasting.
Yep.
Now, Mike is a busy guy, so we gotta respect Mike's size.
Yeah, I can't say that using Night Shift on my iPad is helping me sleep better, but I know that when I'm using it in bed at 2 a.m., it's nicer. And it's not as bright, so it doesn't affect Adina, right, when she's trying to sleep.
Right. So there's been a long-standing joke on the show and the show's predecessor that Mike has a shopping problem, and I think that's overstated. I don't want to beat you up. So this week we're going to beat up Federico a little bit.
Okay. Well, thank you.
What have you bought, Federico?
I bought an old Macintosh computer.
Started a collection.
Not really. I bought a Sonos Play 1. And it's all your fault, Stephen, because you were talking about the Sonos, and the speaker was nice. You said the app was also nice, and I got curious and I got on Amazon. There was a very small discount, but still was a discount. So I used that as an excuse, and I bought a Play 1, and it's now in my living room. And I gotta say, it is nice. It sounds great, and despite the fact that I cannot use Apple's Music app with AirPlay to send audio to the speakers, you got to use the proprietary Sonos iPhone app. It's really nice, and it's got a couple of features that I prefer over Apple's Music app. And those two features are the fact that you can add multiple services to the app. So you can, in my example, I added the local music library, Apple Music, and SoundCloud. So from the same search screen, you can search for a song, and you get results organized in different sources within the same screen. So last night, for example, I was looking for the remix of a song, and it was not available on Apple Music because in the results screen, I got the official original song, but in the same screen, I also got the remix from SoundCloud. So I like that I can look for music in multiple sources and within the same app send audio to the Play 1. I also like the fact that you can mark as favorite any item. So you can essentially create bookmarks, and I believe they're called Sonos favorites. And so I added a couple of Apple Music playlists to the favorite screen, an album, couple of songs. So depending on what I'm into lately, I can create these bookmarks so I can get to them more quickly. And that's nice. The setup with Apple Music, and you didn't mention this, Stephen, because you don't use Apple Music. It was also pretty good, I would say. Basically, when you install the Sonos app, you gotta go into the settings screen and accept the beta program, and the beta program allows you to access beta channels, so beta audio sources, and one of them is Apple Music. When you reboot, actually you gotta quit the app and reopen it for the setting to show up. You accept Apple Music, and you're taken to this custom permission screen in the Apple Music app, and it says you're logged in with your Apple ID. Do you want to authorize Sonos to connect to your Apple Music account? You say yes, and then I came across a bug that wasn't redirecting me to the Sonos app, but after like 30 seconds, it did take me back to Sonos, and Apple Music was a source. So when you're back into the Sonos app and your Apple Music account is connected, you get access to the For You recommendations, the section, the top charts, Apple Music playlists by the Apple Music editorial team. You can search, you can view new releases, top charts, basically everything that Apple Music does. Well, almost everything, because there's no connect. You cannot love songs, with a little heart icon, but everything else works, and it's nice. I really do like the way that the Sonos app is designed, and the bookmark feature. Of course, the performance of the Play 1 is great. I do love how it sounds. One thing that I'm skeptical about is because of this external integration between Sonos and Apple Music and the lack of the ability to like a song. I wonder if when you listen to Apple Music inside Sonos app, does it train the Apple Music algorithm to kind of understand what you like? So my fear is that as long as I listen to Sonos, my taste in Apple Music won't be updated to reflect what I'm listening to. Or maybe it does. It really doesn't say. I couldn't find any documentation or FAQ section explaining how the integration works. But as long as the listening experience goes, I gotta say it's pretty well done. The Play One sounds great. Now I was talking to Steven and Mike before the show. I kind of want to buy a Play 5, but it's really expensive. So I guess I'm just gonna use the Play One for now. It also looks great. I invited a bunch of friends for dinner last weekend, and every one of them was like, "Hey, what's that? It looks great." So I think the Sonos as a home accessory also has a nice feel and look to it, which is welcome. And so for now, count me as a satisfied customer. I just wonder, the nerd in me wonders about the integration with Apple Music, but it's in beta, so maybe by the final release we'll get a love icon and all the other features.
Why do you like it more than your Bose? Because you can just send everything via AirPlay to the Bose sound link that you have.
Because it's louder and it sounds better. Okay,
so you actually find that it's not just a software thing. Like that speaker is much better than the Bose speaker.
Oh yeah. Okay. No, it sounds better. And when you do the first setup, so this is funny. Sonos says, "What's the name, Steven, of the real audio? What did they call it? Clear audio or something?"
Something.
Oh, is that the thing where you have to walk around your room?
Yes, you have to walk around your room and scan your room with the iPhone microphone. So my girlfriend walked out on me while I was doing that, and I was basically telling her to stay quiet, and she was like looking at me and just wondering what I was doing. I looked like a crazy person walking around the kitchen with an iPhone and just waving the iPhone around, and the Sonos was playing like a little continuous beep. It was quite unsettling, but it sounds better than the Bose, and it sounds great as a speaker in general. Now we're gonna get the follow-up from audiophiles telling us that there are much better speakers around, but I don't care because it looks great, works well. So Steven was right, dare I say, but I wouldn't say that I have a shopping problem.
Based on your recommendations, I would get one. As I say, like if our home situation was different, right, and if we were in our own place already, this is something that I would probably get, because you two both seem very very effusive about it. And when you're like that, as the same thing was with the 6 Plus, right? If one of us likes something this much, we probably all will.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And to Federico's point, mine is out in the kitchen, and we've had people over, and it doesn't look like a piece of technology sitting out there on the counter. It does a remarkably good job at being understated while looking nice, and that is important for something that's going to be part of your home, right? Like things in the kitchen or things out in the living room, like in these common areas, should look good, and it's nice that they play into that. So, thumbs up from two of the three connected co-hosts.
Yeah.
Before we move into our first break for this week's episode, we should ask the question, Federico Vitici, has Google Docs or Google Sheets been updated for iOS 9?
Well, no.
Okay.
I'm sorry, guys. It's just not happening. We keep mentioning these, and no. I'm sorry, Mike.
This week's episode is brought to you by Smile and PDF Pen. PDF Pen is your Swiss Army knife for working with PDFs. It has all of the basics covered, such as filling and signing forms, making edits, highlighting, and using OCR, so you can take the text from a PDF and you can put it anywhere that you need to, just very easily, just being able to copy and paste with the powerful OCR built into PDF Pen. You'll also be a PDF wizard when you use things like redaction, the ability to export a PDF, a marked up PDF as in a Word format, page numbering, and Bates numbering as well. And with PDF Pen for iPad and iPhone, you'll be able to take control of contracts and forms no matter where you are. Also, if you're the type of person who enjoys a paperless office, PDF Pen is for you. No more printing, scanning, and faxing. You can just receive a PDF by email or a document by email. You can sign it right on the device that you're on and email it straight back. You'll be on your way. You can just fill in and sign. Now, I had a great experience with PDF Pen on my iPad yesterday evening. I had to create a contract, and I wrote it up in Pages, right? So I just typed everything out in Pages, and then I could just very easily send the PDF from Pages directly into PDF Pen, where I was able to open it up on my iPad. I grabbed my Apple Pencil, signed it, and then I just uploaded it directly to Dropbox so I could grab it as an attachment to email out. It was super, super simple. I love the kind of the seamless experience that PDF Pen gives me. I can just jump into it, get what I need, and very, very easily export it out. Smile offers a bunch of great tutorials about PDF Pen from Mr. David Sparks. These short videos will teach you everything that you need to know about PDF Pen 7, and you can find these and more information over at smilesoftware.com/connected. PDF Pen 7 and PDF Pen Pro 7 require Yosemite and work beautifully on El Capitan. PDF Pen for iOS is available on the App Store. Thank you so much to Smile for their support of this show. So a few weeks ago, Federico, you created and you were tweeting about this a bunch, but I don't think that you've written it up or anything. No. You kind of shot, edited, and posted a video to YouTube, all with your iOS devices, right?
Yeah. Dance video.
Yeah. So just explain kind of the background for this video, so people can understand what it was and what it's all about.
Well, the backstory is my girlfriend studies hip hop in a local dance school here in Rome, and there's different groups of people there. And a few months ago, some of her friends were talking about recording a choreography video and posting it on YouTube, because this is something, recording routines and choreographies that they do quite often at the school. So the teachers can either collaborate with students, or they leave students to do that by themselves, to kind of form smaller crews and create a choreography and eventually make a video and share it on YouTube or Facebook. So we were talking during the summer about recording a video. And because Sylvia and her friends know about my interest in technology and the fact that I have always the latest iPhones, and the fact that the iPhone has a decent camera, they were like, you should maybe record a video on the iPhone, because maybe it'll turn out to be a decent one. And in September, when I bought the 6S Plus with additional camera improvements, the topic surfaced again. And so we decided that by November/December, we would get together after they, of course, decided the choreography and the music to record a video. So I offered to shoot the video and edit the video with with the devices that I own. And I made it very clear from the outset that I couldn't use a Mac, because I don't have any professional video editing apps on the Mac, or the knowledge to use a Mac for such a task.
And I'm assuming you also saw this as a nice little challenge for yourself.
Exactly. It was a nice challenge, and I always like to mix. I'm about to sound terrible, but I like to mix favors with personal interests. I was doing a favor to my friend, but it was also an opportunity to say, this is going to be nice for me, because maybe I can write about it. Maybe I can, get in touch with developers, or I can talk about it on the show. And I always like when I can try different apps and kind of get out of my workflow, which is basically just writing.
I always like when I can turn things that happen in my life into show topics.
Yes, exactly. So I said yes, sure, let's do it. And the girls decided the music. Sylvia did the editing and the mixing for the track, because they wanted to cut out some seconds here and there from the music. And so we settled on the equipment that was needed to shoot the video. So I was using my iPhone 6s Plus. The audio during the shooting process was coming out of my Bose portable Bluetooth speaker. And this is one aspect that I couldn't quite understand. So I asked the girls, so how does it work when you dance and there's music in the background, and then you gotta remove the background audio from the videos, and you gotta overlay the clean track from the MP3 file? And I thought there was maybe some kind of signal, that the girls would have to kind of suggest later when I needed to cut the track. But basically, the process was really simple. You just mute the track, get a couple of dancers with you during the editing process, and they tell you where to put in the music. So yeah, that was basically, there's no fancy system for overlaying the music after. You just gotta get the dancers and the choreographer to tell you, okay, this is where the music goes.
It's an art, man.
Yeah. So during we were lucky because we picked one morning that was really nice weather, and we shot the video at the park, where we also go to have parties at night. We talked about this before. It's a public park, and it's got a couple of areas where you can play around. There's kids playing football, or there's other dancers also practicing their routines. So we picked a location. I took my Bose, my iPhone 6s Plus, and I bought a Joby Gorilla Pod. One of those like arms that you can wrap around things. I used my tripod, and which is also a selfie stick, by the way. It's an accessory that I bought on Amazon last summer. So I had that, a couple of external batteries for the iPhone, in case it was running out of power. And I also downloaded a different camera app than the standard one. It was called Pro Camera, because I wanted to be a pro, right? That was my thinking.
Yeah.
So I researched a few of these topics. So I looked at Austin Mann's blog. I read a couple of reviews of the iPhone as a camera from, photographers and people who shot video on the iPhone. I watched some YouTube videos. So I knew what I had to do. But I just wanted to make sure that I had the best apps for the job. And I thought the Pro Camera was going to be a good option. It wasn't, because I didn't really understand the interface. And eventually I realized very quickly, during the shooting process, that what we needed was just the standard camera app with the exposure and focus lock. So, I shot a couple of videos with the Pro Camera app. I noticed some inconsistencies with the output, and just went back to the standard camera app by Apple. Also, another decision that we made, we wanted to have the video, of course, in 1080p HD, no 4K, because it wasn't necessary.
Why?
Well, because the file size was going to be huge, and I thought that was going to be maybe a concern with editing a lot of videos at once on the iPad. It wasn't going to be an issue, but I still had said, most of you guys at the school don't even shoot videos in 720p. I think we're gonna be fine if we do 1080p and upload to YouTube. That's gonna be all that you need, really. It wasn't maybe a future-proofing decision, but I still think that for now, people don't have 4K TVs or 4K displays, at least not the people that I know here, the people who are gonna watch the video at the school, or other dancers. So I think 1080p is gonna be just fine. Another decision that we kind of struggled was whether we were going to do 30 frames per second or 60. And after many tests, we chose to go with the 60 frames per second because of the fluidity of the movements. And it looked strange initially.
Yeah, 60 frames per second does look weird.
It looks weird, but for choreographies and dance routines, I think you can tell the difference between 30 and 60, and 60 looks much better because you can catch all of the movements. And
if what you're trying to do is display movement, then 60 frames per second is better because you'll catch more of it. That would be my assumption anyway.
Yeah, and it was really tricky to explain and to show the differences and why it mattered, because again, these are not the kind of tech people that follow, the latest specs for the new iPhones and what does it mean to have a video with the specific frames per second. They just wanted to have a good video, but I think in the end, showing the same video in 30 frames per second and 60, I convinced them to do 60, and they all loved it. So that was nice. The morning of the shooting, we got nice weather, which was nice. And what I really had to do was make sure that the iPhone was on a stand and it was, wasn't moving. And I had my iPad with the Documents app by Riddle with the MP3 file. And what I needed to do was connect the both to the iPad and play the segment of the song that they needed to record the section for over and over. So I had my iPad next to me, the iPhone on the tripod recording the girls, and I was just saving the video for each section to the camera roll. And other highlights and maybe struggles. At one point, I needed to record a section where I was walking towards the girl in the middle of the group. And I didn't buy one of those shoulder mounts for the iPhone that stabilizes your camera when you walk or when you move around. And in hindsight, I should have bought one of those because the section of the video that I don't like is when I walk and go towards the group of dancers.
So you wanted like a Steadicam type thing?
Yeah, I wanted like a Steadicam. I saw on Amazon there's like chest mounts or shoulder mounts. And for the next video, because we're doing one, I'm probably gonna get one of those because I want to make sure that it holds steady as I walk or pan around, that kind of stuff. The other section that I liked doing because it was quite funny and original, I had to lay on the ground, wrap the Joby around the iPhone, put the Joby Gorilla Pod on the ground, and with the little tilting arm that the Joby has, I needed to pan slowly with the camera because there's like a section of the song where the camera goes from right to left and then again from left to right, and I needed to just lay on the ground and I looked like something was wrong because there were people walking and they were looking at me just all laid on the ground, just moving this phone. It was quite the scene. There were people looking, definitely.
When you do things like this, you have to remove any embarrassments that you would normally have in life.
Oh, no. I just don't care. Whatever. It's not like I was stealing something. I was just recording a video. And there was quite an audience there because there were other people watching. And I think I looked more professional than I really was. I wouldn't say that I didn't know what I was doing, but it's just,
you were kind of making it up as you were going along, right? Like,
exactly.
You'd never done it before.
No, never. First time. So we were done, I would say, in about 2-3 hour stops. And we recorded other sections where the main character from the video, my friend Julia, was just walking around doing silly things because we wanted to have like filler sections. And by the end of that, we went home and it was all done in 3 hours, I would say.
So you're filming over a couple of hours. How long was any one shot? I mean, how long was any one section of recording?
I would say usually between 40 seconds and 2 minutes.
Okay. And the phone kept up with that okay? I know some, even some like full-size air quotes, super big air quotes, real cameras, you've got sort of a time limit before the sensor gets too warm and they've got to shut the shutter. And and sort of reset. But the phone kept up fine, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah, no, it was perfect. I kept the phone open in the camera app all the time. And actually, I noticed the saving process because I was, one of my concerns was maybe the camera app will go crazy after saving, what was that, like 50 files in a row, one after the other to the camera roll. And instead, it just worked flawlessly. Actually, the problem was when I got home and I plugged my phone into the power outlet, it started backing up to iCloud and my Wi-Fi got crazy because I couldn't. I was like, what's going on? What's my Wi-Fi down? And instead, it was the iPhone backing up to iCloud immediately. Yeah.
All right, so what does the edit process look like? What were you using to edit these files together into the final video?
So before, during the research phase, before shooting the video, what I knew, my very limited knowledge was that Apple makes iMovie. So my idea was, okay, can I use Final Cut? Because I don't own Final Cut and I don't feel bad saying this. I don't know how to use a Mac anymore. So I want to do this on the iPad. I got an iPad Pro. It's powerful. Apple makes it to be, a powerful device for video editing. I want to use my iPad Pro. So what are my options? I looked at iMovie. I imported a bunch of old videos into iMovie. And now I know that we're going to get a lot of people saying, oh, you could do this and this with iMovie. It's a great app. I just cannot figure out how to use iMovie on the iPad. There's something, or maybe more, a bunch of different aspects about the interface or the features that I don't get. I don't understand how to place videos, how to overlay text, how to do transitions. And I'm quite positive that I'm not completely stupid. And there's something about, the UI or the gestures that I don't get. So I started looking at options on the App Store. And what I wanted was ideally like a Final Cut made by other people. That was my idea. I couldn't find one. I did find a lot of camera apps with even advanced ones that do 4K, have a lot of professional settings. These are the apps that like TV crews use. And those apps had like basic video editing features built in. But what I wanted was not a camera app with some video editing features. I wanted a professional, powerful video editing app. What I then remembered was that a few years ago, Avid used to make their video editing app for the iPad. And I remember because I wrote about it on Mac Stories. But the app disappeared at one point. It was discontinued by Avid. And what I discovered was that some folks at the developers are called Luma Studio, I believe. They acquired the assets of the app, or they licensed maybe from Avid. Anyway, they make now what is called Pinnacle Studio and Pinnacle Studio Pro for the iPhone and the iPad, which is essentially the successor to Avid on iOS. And it immediately clicked with me. The interface, how you place videos in the timeline, how you organize text effects or transitions, or how you import music from external sources. Everything about Pinnacle Studio kind of plays well with the way that I think about video editing and, importing files, making transitions, cutting, little seconds here and there. So I bought Pinnacle Studio Pro from my iPad Pro on 4 or 5 days before the video, and I spent all of those days learning the documentation, watching the tutorial videos, reading on the forums. And after the day of the shooting, when I went back home, I started importing the videos into Pinnacle Studio Pro to get an idea. Is this gonna work out or what? Early results were positive, so I invited the girls over to do the video editing together, especially because of the music and because my friend Julia had to decide which kind of shoots and scenes to use, and we just went from there, and we did it all in Pinnacle Studio Pro. For the editing, for the effects, we use a bunch of other apps, and I assume you guys wanna know about them.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about Pinnacle that it's hard to look at.
Yeah, it is not pretty.
No, it's really, really not pretty. And it's not even okay. If it does the job, great, but it really is not good looking. And it's not just bad looking in a weird way. It's like it doesn't even look like an iOS app in places.
No, it looks like a Windows app. Maybe
if I was looking for an app in the App Store and saw this one, like, I wouldn't get it.
Yeah,
I would look at the screenshots and be like, nah.
And this is why I think it's so important sometimes to go beyond the app icon or the screenshots and to actually take a look at the functionalities, because Pinnacle doesn't look great. It doesn't even look good, I would say, but it's very functional.
But like, it's difficult though, right? Because the UI is all you have, and if you're looking at the screenshots and it looks horrific, like, how do you know that it's good?
Well,
like that's the problem, right? And then you go into the whole, like, there should be more editorial, blah 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 blah, right? Like, but I guess this is kind of the job that people like you do, right?
Yeah, I every time I face a problem that requires software, and I don't know my options, or I know that an option exists, but I'm not completely sure about it, I kind of take a leap of faith every time I buy something from the App Store. And so I took a look at the features, and the app was updated for iOS 9 and the iPad Pro. It supported all the stuff that I wanted, like 4K, 1080p, 60 frames per second. It could be integrated with Dropbox to import the audio file that I had. And when I also noticed that it was the new version of Avid, it all came back to me. I remember that back in the day, we're talking about 4 years ago, I had the same reaction with iMovie and Avid. I just preferred Avid by a wide margin to Apple's take on video editing. And so, yeah, it didn't look pretty. And I mean, in some places it looks terrible. But I had a feeling that it could be functional and it could be what I wanted. So I downloaded the app, and I still think, it could be improved in a lot of ways. But when it comes to working and making a video, I would say I'm super happy that I bought it, because, it got me from 50 files to a video on YouTube, and pretty happy with the result.
So, what do you think was maybe made more difficult in using iOS for this process? Did you come up to anything or come up against anything that was like, I can see that iOS is making this tricky for me?
Yeah, well, aside from limitations of the app, so of course, if you get Final Cut or, what's the one that Adobe makes, Premiere. You get tons more features. There's no question about that. So I was already limiting myself to a subset of features that, professional video editing people get in desktop apps. But iOS itself, I would say a couple of limitations I did see. And it comes down to the Photos app and the way that you manage files and the way that you export files. So the first issue was I wanted to be able to do some basic organization and do some kind of tagging, to kind of attach metadata to files to say, okay, this is a wide shoot, this is a panoramic shoot, this is a photo. And I wanted to have some, I don't know the correct terminology, but maybe like project management to do, okay, I want to tag these videos, I want to put these assets together, and I couldn't do that in the Photos app. I could only do folders, or I could videos, but I wanted something more to organize the assets.
And also, I assume working on a project like this is where you start to feel the issues of there not being like a central accessible file system.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because, Pinnacle has a Photos UI. It's not a traditional popover. It actually displays all the videos from your camera roll in a custom list, and it's nice because Pinnacle remembers. Like if you set a different starting point or a different cut point in a video, it remembers that the next time you import the file from the Photos app.
So it's doing the job of saving some metadata about the files.
It does. Right. It does. But the moment you delete those files from your device, to save space, it sort of goes crazy and you need to put the files back again into the Photos app. Otherwise, you cannot open the project. So I don't know if it's a limitation of Pinnacle or if it's Apple or it must be both. Yeah. But what I knew was, I was thinking, man, it'd be nice to have some tags or folders here. And the second problem was we wanted to apply some additional effects and edits to the videos before importing them in Pinnacle. So we used video grade to do what's called color grading. Basically lets you define the same sort of color effect and tints and saturation, that kind of stuff, because we wanted to have like a grungy fading feel to the video. And every time I export it from video grade, it creates another copy in the Photos app. And I know that you gotta do that because of course you gotta export a new file with the settings applied. But still, it relates to the first problem. You end up with all these files and you cannot tag them. And it would have been nice, for example, to have a single view of all these assets in the Photos app and have maybe a little icon or a little badge next to the ones exported from video grade to say, yeah, you exported this from video grade, so you can filter by app that you exported from.
It's like even giving them a file name.
No,
help,
you cannot.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I wanted to give them a file name and I couldn't. iOS actually has file names, but you don't see them. And you can access them with workflow. You can do stuff with the file names, but you cannot do that natively. And when you work on a project like this, it becomes a problem.
I was gonna say, just how was juggling the storage? I mean, you've got the 128 gig iPad Pro, right?
Yeah.
I mean, was there a lot of juggling stuff around, or did you have a pretty decent amount of storage where you weren't running into that very much?
I thought about that, but eventually storage was fine. It wasn't really a concern. What I did was, the moment I got home, I backed up with the image capture all the files to my Mac, just to make sure that they were on another physical location.
Could you have done that with a hard drive? You can, right? If you have the camera connection kit.
Probably, yeah. There's a bunch of third-party companies making hard drives that let you back up photos and videos. I could have, but I didn't have one. Okay. And then what we did was, when the girls came over and we started looking at the footage, we were looking on the iPhone. So when there were bad shoots that was immediately clear we were not going to use them, we just discarded them on the iPhone. So we were watching on the iPhone. And the videos that we liked on the iPhone, we airdropped from the iPhone to the iPad to transfer them selectively, just the ones we liked from the iPhone to the iPad. We looked again on the iPad, confirmed that we were going to edit that one, and we imported from the Photos app into Pinnacle. And actually, I got to say, airdrop was okay. But I believe it's because, latest iPhone, decent local Wi-Fi connection. I mean, if airdrop failed in that case, I would have been disappointed, but it didn't.
Once you get it working, it works. But sometimes the problem is just like it won't find any devices.
It did get stuck a couple of times, and it was fixed by switching to airplane mode, waiting a couple of seconds, toggling, airplane mode off, and it was working again.
What was made easier by iOS?
Well, the downside of photos, no management, no file names, no tagging, it's also the upside because you get all these photos straight and videos straight from the camera app into a single location, and it's very easy to import and to preview. The footage looks great from the iPhone 6s Plus, so it's nice to be able to just shoot and it's there. So that was nice, I can imagine using a camera, you gotta use an SD card or a separate hard drive, import back on your computer. Instead on the iPhone, the same device, the same, I would say computer, it's both the camera and the storage location, which was, it was a nice experience. On the iPad Pro, the videos looked and sounded great because of the screen and because of the speakers. You could tell the difference between the iPad Air 2 and the iPad Pro, when you do that kind of stuff. And especially with that song, when where some movements are based on a very specific beat in the song, and you gotta catch that beat, which is usually like a drum beat or another electronic effect, or the bass. You can tell with the speakers the difference between the iPad Pro and the Air 2. In fact, I never use headphones to overlay the footage with the song because the speakers were more than enough. And the iPad Pro, I would also say, performance was great not just when editing, because Pinnacle, it really is a powerful app. Never crashed or stopped working. When we exported from Pinnacle to the local Photos app in 1080p, it took me about 20-30 seconds. So I know that if I was doing this on my MacBook Air from 2011, it would have been a problem. I wouldn't even been able to import all those files and scroll the timeline in Pinnacle. Instead, on the iPad, it's super smooth. I was scrolling, always responsive. So performance of the hardware was really nice.
So do you feel that next time you've got pretty much everything you need, like setup wise now? You're feeling pretty confident?
I'm gonna buy one of those Steadicam accessories because we already know the next video is gonna involve more walking and movement and zooming, on dancers' faces. So we're gonna get new equipment there, and what we actually have to figure out is to YouTube. The biggest problem in the end was YouTube, because the video got blocked on mobile devices because of a copyright problem, of course, with the song.
Right. You got hit by their tagging.
Yes, I was hit by YouTube copyright system, the Content ID. And it's stupid because on the desktop, YouTube chose to show ads from the label, from the music label.
Yeah,
you can view them you can view the video on the desktop with ads, but you cannot view the video with ads on mobile devices, which I don't understand. There's just show a video, show an ad on mobile too. Anyway, next time, I know the girls are probably gonna use a lesser known song from a smaller label, so there's a good chance that maybe this label won't have any copyright problem. If it does, we're also considering Vimeo Plus. The problem here is when the video got blocked on YouTube, they asked me, do we have any other options? So the first option was just put the video on Facebook. And a lot of dance schools and crews do that these days, because you get the autoplay, you get a lot of views, but that can also be a concern because a lot of those views, I wouldn't say they're fake, but they generate from autoplay, and instead the girls wanted to have real metrics to kind of understand the video. And plus, people go to YouTube, and it's nice to be able to search on YouTube and find the video. But maybe if they want to have a proper portfolio or a web page where they can showcase the video in full quality, maybe we'll consider having a backup on Vimeo. But we don't know yet.
I'm gonna put just an interesting YouTube video from the In a Nutshell channel, which was previously called Kazakazat, which I can't say, about how Facebook views work. It's fascinating, and yeah, you're right, they are fake in a lot of instances. But it's just if you are at all interested in that, it's fascinating. Plus, that channel's production quality is incredible. So you should watch their videos anyway. Yeah, okay, so that's the Content ID system is a problem. Like, so what are you looking at? Maybe Vimeo instead, other than Facebook?
Yeah.
It's less of a platform.
Yeah,
though, right?
exactly. It's more of a... Again, I use the word portfolio because if you want to have a website where you show off your videos, you can have a Vimeo embed, and it's nice because you don't have to upload the video to your own CDN, which of course the girls don't have. But it's less popular. Basically, people 20 somethings don't go to Vimeo and search for videos. They go to YouTube, or they scroll their Facebook feeds. And so if we're gonna end up using Vimeo, it'll only be a backup plan. Basically, we're just crossing our fingers that the next song won't be problematic with the content ID. And I know that teachers at Silva School also have the same problem. It's basically random. Sometimes the video is okay, other times they block you, other times it's okay for a couple of months and then they block you, but only on some devices or in some countries. For example, the video, the ones that I shot, was originally blocked in Germany, and in Germany only. I don't understand why it's only in Germany. Maybe, the Germans don't like that kind of stuff. I don't know. But now it's blocked everywhere on mobile, but you can go on a desktop computer. And I'm pretty sure also if you use an iPad, just request the desktop website for YouTube and you'll be able to watch it.
All right, so you weren't the only person creating videos for YouTube, but Stephen did it in the exact opposite way to you. But before we talk about that, let's thank our friends over at Squarespace for helping support this week's show. You can start building your own website today at squarespace.com, and you want to use the offer code WORLD at checkout. You will get 10% off if you do so. Squarespace, build it beautiful. With Squarespace, you'll be able to put a site online that looks professionally designed, regardless of your skill level, with no coding experience required, but also with their intuitive and easy-to-use tools. You can make that website look and feel and operate exactly the way that you like. Squarespace has state-of-the-art technology and fantastic page building tools that will allow you to create a site that you want to display to the world with easy drag and drop little widgets that they have. So you can drag and drop in galleries, you can drag and drop in audio players and video players and all that cool stuff. And you can drag and drop in Markdown content blocks so you can write in Markdown. It really is super simple and you can make that website feel awesome. They also ensure security and stability at all times. And Squarespace is trusted by millions of people around the world for these reasons, including their 24/7 support. They have live chat and email. They're always there when you need them. And this will help you if you have any queries or concerns or questions. Squarespace is on hand to help you out 24/7. Squarespace's site templates all feature responsive design, so they look great on all devices on all sizes, and this goes all the way across their whole platform into things like their cover page, their commerce platform, which allows anybody to add a store to their site, which we use at Relay FM to sell our stickers and stuff like that. And also Squarespace have their dev platform, so if you do understand the code and you do want to make some tweaks and stuff like that, you can go in and you can make those changes and push the Squarespace site further than ever before. Squarespace plans start at just $8 a month, and if you sign up for a year, you'll also get yourself a free domain name as well. You can start a free trial today with no credit card required and start building your website by going to squarespace.com. And when you decide to sign up, make sure that you use the offer code WORLD, WORLD, at checkout. Not only will you support Connected if you do so, you'll get 10% off your first purchase as well. Thank you so much to Squarespace for their support of this show and Relay FM. Squarespace, build it beautiful. So Stephen, what did you do this week?
It was really interesting listening to Federico describe his process with his video, and because that basically did everything completely, like you said, completely the opposite way, completely different. Down even to the subject matter, where Federico had beautiful dancing people, I had other people's used iPod Nanos. Not quite the same.
Still a beautiful collection, nevertheless.
Far less music, far less dancing. So I've, as we have discussed on the show, have a growing collection of Apple stuff, and I've written about it for years. I mean, if you look at the Apple History Archives on 512, it goes way back. But I thought a new fun way to talk about some of that stuff would be with video. And so this is the first in what I hope will be a long series of videos talking about the history and showing off, in this case, the 7 generations of iPod Nano. So I've gathered one example of each generation and talked about it and put a little 4.5 minute thing together. And basically in a completely different way, and I think a much more traditional way than what Federico did, but, was able to have something at the end of it that is on YouTube in 1080p that I'm, happy with. So we end up in the same place, but came about it a very different way. No iOS devices whatsoever involved in mine. everything was shot on a Sony RX100 Mark III.
Why did you choose that and not your iPhone, just out of interest?
I did try it with the iPhone, and the iPhone does a good job. The Sony does a really good job, though, tightening the depth of field a little bit and making that background washed out a little bit. I shot it all in a light box, and I really wanted the background to be basically just completely just blown out. And Sony did a better job of that than the iPhone. I definitely could have done it on the iPhone. I mean, the iPhone footage, I mean, no surprise, it does a wonderful job. But I like the way the Sony looked a little bit better. But it does come with those trade-offs, like Federico was saying. You can go back and you can look at it on camera, but it's really best to pop that SD card out and import it, in my case, into Final Cut Pro 10 on the Mac. And like Federico, my video has audio in it, but I didn't use the audio from the camera. I narrated the whole thing a couple of days later, actually, into the microphone I'm talking in right now, into my podcasting setup. And so the audio at the time, of filming, like, has like our 1-year-old was walking around the house babbling, and he's in there, so I cut all that out. But it was all done in Final Cut Pro 10. And
why did you choose Final Cut?
I will say I have very little video experience, but the little bit of video experience I have is in Final Cut Pro 10, just because it's what's been available to me in the past. I have, I pay for Adobe Creative Cloud and have Premiere. I can download it and install it, but I'm just a little more familiar with Final Cut Pro 10. And that's not to say I'm an expert. That's not to say that I'm even competent. It's just the little degree of knowledge I have is in that app. And I know, especially on the Mac, that people kind of choose their camp and live in it, and that's fine, but it got the job done for me. I will say that as someone who uses Logic every week and is pretty proficient at Logic, Logic and Final Cut Pro 10 are much more different than you would expect them to be. So like even the way you go in and make cuts and the keyboard shortcuts, like, they're not the same. And I really wish they were, because my Logic muscle memory was actually harmful in places at Final Cut. So that was just surprising to me that they're not more similar in the way they operate. But I guess they are very different tools, and that's fine. I did do a little bit of shooting on an iPod Nano. The 5th gen iPod Nano had a video camera because, and it's in the keynote, Apple wanted to go after the flip cam. So good job, I guess, killing those guys off.
Well, flip is dead, so maybe.
Yeah, I think
this
that
is
had
what
more to
did
do
it.
with the iPhone than the iPod Nano. But
Nah.
the Nano was always Apple's playground to a degree, and they tried different things, and they made it a new one every year for 6 years, I think, to keep it fresh and to keep it people wanting the new one. And $150, it was a good Christmas present. And I think they just tried things. And that video, you walk through, some of those iPod Nanos are much stranger than others. But I'll say that even doing 4.5 minutes, and I did very little color correction. I did a little bit. I did, obviously I had my audio tracking. I had still images that I dropped into the thing as well. That even on a current generation 15-inch MacBook Pro, like, you're waiting for the render time, and you're hearing the fan spin up, and the computer is working. It's not necessarily a walk in the park to put something like this together from a hardware perspective. And so hats off to the iPad Pro to be able to do this sort of work in that form factor with the thermal constraints and no fans. It really is. I'm in awe of what the iPad Pro can do, seeing what my much more expensive, much more powerful 15-inch MacBook Pro struggled to do. And it's not to say that my render times were long. It's not to say that, my computer was getting ready to take off like a jet, but it was noticeable. I mean, when it was rendering, my computer was rendering. It wasn't doing much else. And so it's really, really impressive just how capable the iPad has become, and really how amazing that Apple chipset is in that thing, that it can keep up with this sort of work. It really just blows me away. But I will say, I think the big difference in listening to Federico's workflow and thinking about my own is that mine was all done in one program. It was all done in Final Cut, including the voiceover work, where I had Final Cut open, and Final Cut has a record voiceover function. It's very similar to what like we record in QuickTime or a call record or something, where there's just a button, you go in there and you can record it. But you can see the video at the same time, so it's kind of nice to know where you are. I did all of that in Final Cut Pro. I didn't have to go out and do something somewhere else and then re-import it and kind of do that dancing around a little bit that Federico did. And that was nice. And I know depending on what you're doing, you have to do that even on the Mac. I'm not saying that's a unique thing, but it was kind of nice that all of these tools were in one program. Now that program is a multitude times more expensive than what Federico spent on his software, and much more complicated. I mean, Final Cut Pro 10 does stuff that I just straight up don't understand and don't have any need for at this point, where I feel like on iOS, the tools are a little more sharpened and you can get something that does just what you need to do and nothing else, but it does that really well. It's always been an interesting trade-off and like a different approach in desktop software and mobile software to me.
I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, about kind of apps on iOS and apps on the Mac. And it really is now, at least in my opinion, apps are just more exciting on iOS. And I think it's because this is where the movement is. This is where like the idea of like kind of like the unbundling type thing, right? That people make specific tools that do specific things. And then because that, you use way more apps on iOS, which means that there's a larger market and more choice. And I think that's what's pushing me to do a lot more of my work on iOS these days, is that there seems to just be more excitement and more movement in the apps that I use than there is on the Mac. It's very rare that I will add a new Mac app to the system, right? It just doesn't happen so much. The things that I have are the things that exist, but I'm adding new iOS apps like basically on a daily basis, things that I'm trying out, things I'm excited to check out, and that just doesn't happen for me on the Mac.
It's just interesting, and maybe it's the way that desktop software should be. You look in the Mac App Store and you can kind of see that trend where the Mac App Store is chock full of these little utilities or little programs that do just a handful of things.
I feel like if you were to just go to the Mac App Store and look at everything, like you could do that. Like you could just scroll through and see every icon and it wouldn't take you a massive amount of time. You couldn't do that on iOS, right? Like it would take too long.
Yeah, exactly. And iOS is a younger platform. You know, Final Cut Pro 10, even though they ripped all the guts out and everybody set their hair on fire, it really is an old program. You know, it's been around for in one form or another for years and years and years. Well, that is not the case for all these programs on iOS. Some of them are, and some of them have been around since the beginning of iOS, but
that beginning wasn't a long time ago.
Right. So that's an interesting thing too, and I wonder if it'll level out over time. But that is really that really struck me in thinking about the workflows being so different, where Final Cut Pro is this big market of stuff, and I can do anything I need to in it, where on iOS you kind of string it together. But anyways, like I said, at the end of the day, I think what's most interesting about this topic to me is that Federico and I both got, at the end of the day, something we were proud of, something that we, I worked hard on my video, Federico worked hard on his, but it wasn't an insurmountable amount of work, right? I didn't rage smash my MacBook Pro trying to get it to do something. Federico didn't rage smash his iPad Pro trying to get it to do something. The tools are there and you can use them. And for people like us who are not professionals in this sense whatsoever, we can make something that looks good and that we're proud of with the tools that we can just go out and purchase. And that is pretty cool. And something that, Federico's next video and the video after that and the video after that will continue to get better and better. And I hope mine will as well. I think they will. And that's because we can use these tools and push them harder as we learn about them. And that is kind of what computing is about to me, that you can have a picture in your mind of what you want, and then you can go make it and figure it out because of the tools the software gives you. And that's a lot of fun. I think it's fun to explore that sort of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I like is like looking and watching both of these videos. There's no way that you could tell which one was made on either device, right? There's nothing to say that one was made on iOS and one was made on the Mac.
Right.
They just look like they were professionally made. Like there's nothing to say that oh, you can tell that video was made on iOS because of X. Like there's nothing to say that.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest testament there is the iPhone 6s camera. That its footage really does look like something that, my Sony, the RX100, is an expensive camera, and I've got a full DSLR that I'm going to use in the future, but is even more money. But the iPhone 6s that Federico had in his pocket did, really just as good of a job. And if the conditions are right, I mean, Federico gave it the best shot possible, being outside, being on a beautiful day. But even inside under studio lights or, in a controlled environment, it does such a fantastic job that unless you really know what to look for, or unless it's struggling in low light or something like that, it's more than passable. I mean, it does a great job.
Just, because this video was about iPod Nanos. That original Nano, best iPod, best looking iPod, in my opinion.
Yeah, the one before they went with colors, that went with white and black.
Yeah, the first one, the white and black one.
Yeah, it's that they all have their charms, except so you look at the YouTube comments or on Reddit or in my email, everyone has a very strong opinion about the third generation, the sort of fat, squatty one. A lot of people really love it. Like they say, "Oh, it's my first iPod. It's my favorite." I still have it. And then the other side of the coin is that's the worst one by far. What were they thinking? It's just funny to see people's responses to that. Where Apple returned to the candy bar form factor for the 4th and 5th gen, and they sort of in the keynote they're like, "Yeah, we are going back to the previous design. Sorry about that thing." It's just it kind of cracked me up how people responded to it. So
yeah, they did that with a shuffle, didn't they? The one that had no buttons, and then they went back.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could see a shuffle video from you one day.
I have them all. I mean, I've got, I have all the hardware. I just haven't done it. I thought the Nano would be fun to start with because a lot of people had them. They were colorful. I bought mine are all, if you haven't watched the video, in all blue, except for the first one I did in white. But it's just fun to see. Like, they were just a fun product. And I think that resonated with a lot of people. Even if you didn't own a Nano, you wanted one. And I think that is one reason, like that's a reason that I picked it first. I could have done something more esoteric or unusual, and I'll get to that stuff. But I thought the Nano was like a good universal first topic. So,
did you own any of the Nanos, Federico?
No, never. I always had the iPod Classic before getting an iPhone. Yeah.
I mean, I think I had maybe one. I think I only got the first Nano. But that thing, man, that's a good look.
Yeah, it's funny now. They're also, I mean, the biggest one you could ever get was 16 gig. That might be wrong, but I don't think they ever did a 32 gig Nano. But those first ones were like 2 gigs, 4 gigs, 8 gigs, and it's really, I mean, trying to like decide what 2 gigs of music I want to sync to something now is just an impossible task. Like, I mean, obviously we all lived in that era for a long time, but now in the era of streaming or 64 gig phones or, whatever, like 2 gigs just seems so small. But, at the time it was so much cheaper than the full size iPod. Then it was great. And the 7th gen Nano, the one that has Lightning and Bluetooth and everything, that's my workout iPod. And it's one that I take to the gym, or if I'm riding my bike, or mowing the grass. That's the one I use because my phone is big and the iPod is so small, and like that's where the Nano really fit in. And I think people bought them as secondary iPods a lot, which is kind of crazy to think about, but I think it definitely happened.
I had no idea that had Lightning.
Yeah, that's what Marco said. I shared the video in the Relay Slack a couple of days ago, and several people were like, "I didn't know they still made it," or "I didn't know it had Lightning," which is pretty funny. Yeah, the last two were weird because they look like iOS like 5 and 6, but they're not iOS. They run the iPod software still, but made to look like they don't. It's all very strange and crazy. But it is what it is, I guess.
If you want to find the links for this week's episode, head on over to relay.fm/connected/74. If you want to find us all online, you can go to macstories.net for Federico. You can go to 512pixels.net for Stephen. And we are all on Twitter as well. Federico's at Viticci, Viticci. Stephen is ISMH, and I am IMYKE. I'm Mike on Twitter. Thanks again to our sponsors for this week, Squarespace and PDF Pen 7 from Smile. And thank you for listening. We'll be back next time. Until then, say goodbye, guys.
Arrivederci.
Adios.